Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, Black Lives Matter. I wasn't originally going to post a video on this topic because I didn't really feel like it was my place to talk about this issue, but what I've come to realise in the last few weeks is that it's everyone's responsibility to talk about it. So instead of posting nothing this week, because I kind of felt a bit weird posting just me being silly and whatever with everything going on, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit about this today and also touch a little bit on how Japan perceives the Black Lives Matter movement, and at the end I will list a whole bunch of ways in which you can help the Black Lives Matter movement. So stay tuned for that. A lot of people of colour from the UK have on Facebook have posted about their experiences in the last few weeks, and honestly, it was completely shocking to read some of their experiences. It's horrible to hear about. It's important to hear about, but it's horrible. But I think what's more shocking, or the most shocking about all of this, is when you step back and you look at the bigger picture of everything going on, and it's like, black people are literally out here saying, please don't murder us. And there are people arguing against that. How fucked is that? And then you've got a lot of people out there saying all lives matter, hashtag all lives matter, blah blah blah. And like, no one's saying that your life doesn't matter, or that white people's lives don't matter, or that white people's lives can't be difficult, but the world we live in does not treat black people as if they do matter. And so, until the world we live in changes to reflect that, then you can't say that all lives matter, because by the actions of so many people, they don't seem to all matter. It goes further than just the people. I've only really recently just learned exactly and clearly what systematic racism is, and I saw one Instagram post about it which made it very clear to me what that meant, which is that even if there were no racist people, like if tomorrow we all woke up and no one had a racist bone in their body, the world which we've built for ourselves would still benefit and be preferential towards white people, and black people would still be at a disadvantage, because that is how the system works that we live in. I'm so grateful that I live in the time in the world where social media is so present, and the internet and everything, because honestly I don't think I would have understood anything about what's going on without it, because the news only shows like the violence and the riots and the extreme stuff, which is heavily geared in one direction away from what the Black Lives Matter movement actually stands for. But honestly, Instagram has been an absolute beacon of information and enlightenment in the last few weeks. The stuff which people post and explain in like really clear, simple ways. In Japan, a lot of people definitely don't think about it, and that's very obvious. Like, I spoke to a black ALT recently who was saying a lot of the teachers were asking her, why are people in Japan protesting violence going on in America? Like, they truly didn't understand the goals or the points of these protests, or it was very clear that they didn't think that Japan had anything to do with it, when it is very much a global issue. I can understand that to a certain degree, because Japan is such a homogenous country. A lot of Japanese people will never have interacted with a black person before, or even a foreigner a lot of the time, so it's unsurprising that they don't really think about what's going on or don't have a clear understanding. It's not like their Instagram feeds are going to be filled with other Japanese people posting all of this Black Lives Matter content, so they just see like the news from America and stuff, which is heavily just focusing on like the violence caused by black people and stuff, and so yeah, their view of things are warped. And the biggest example of this, which was truly just horrific, was an animation which NHK, one of the big broadcasters in Japan, which they released the other day, or the other week. It was like a minute and a half long, something like that, and I didn't see it myself, but it was taken down the next day or a couple of days later because of the extreme backlash due to the fact that it was in itself incredibly racist, despite the fact its goal was to educate kids on why all these protests and riots are happening in America. And apparently the video was just filled with black stereotypes, being really angry about the fact that the wealth gap between white and black people in America has gotten so big. And because of that, now they're rioting because they're angry. Like, that's so twisted, man. They didn't even mention George Floyd, and like, that's being shown to kids. So how damaging is that people are growing up with this kind of information about the Black Lives Matter movement? I personally think that the best way to promote this cause is through education and make it more of a prominent thing that kids learn about in school. Truly, I did not know much about it. Like, I knew from school that slavery existed at some point, but that was it. So now it's down to me, to you, to everybody to talk about it, because it's everyone's responsibility, and everyone needs to have these discussions so that we do understand what's going on and we can be clear and start to get on the same page. And helping doesn't just mean attending protests. Like, if you don't feel comfortable going to one of these protests in wherever you are in the world, especially now with the pandemic, that's understandable. No one, or at least I'm not judging you for not going to a protest. But that's not an excuse to not do something to help the cause, because there is something everyone can do. From home, for free, there's like a million ways you can help. So I'm going to talk about some of those ways now, so that if you were not 100% sure what you could be doing, well, now you will. First thing, which I think is probably one of the most important things, is to educate yourself about all these issues, because it probably goes a lot deeper than what you think, especially like coming from the UK. I knew racism existed in the UK, but with how much you see in the news about racism in America, I kind of very much distanced the two in terms of how extreme one was compared to the other. But actually, racism is still very much extreme thing in the UK as well, and the history of racism in the UK is a lot more extreme than I realised as well. So I started reading a book called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo Lodge, and it focuses on racism within the UK. Another thing you can do is engage in conversations about racism and the Black Lives Matter movement with your family, with your friends. You don't need a black person present in order to talk about racism. You can be actively calling out people who you see be racist, even if it's in some small way, something they say which isn't quite correct. Like, call them out on it, because if you're just staying silent, then that's not helping anyone. It doesn't matter if they're your friend, someone you just met, an old relative who's set in their ways, because that's not an excuse to be racist. Another way to educate yourself or to become more familiar with the topic, watch movies or listen to podcasts on the topic. I read that Netflix just made one of their movie categories the Black Lives Matter category on Netflix. You could find some podcasts about it. I've got a few here which I'll link below again. One of them is called About Race, and it's from the same person that wrote that book which I started reading. Of course, you can be signing petitions as well. I see a lot of them posted on Instagram and on Facebook, and it literally takes 2 seconds to like sign your name, or to type your name, your email, hit send. I've linked one below. As I said before, I think education's the way to go, so the one I linked is trying to get white privilege and systematic racism to be a mandatory part of education in the UK, like part of the mandatory course that students have to go through. And of course, you can donate money to like a billion different charities, and it can actually be quite overwhelming to think about where you should put your money towards. I'm going to break down a few different kinds of charities with some examples and links and stuff. They're all going to be linked below. So to start off with education, you could donate to the Black Curriculum or the Red Card that again promote education on racism within the UK. Another route of education is that you could donate to charities which help create more learning opportunities for people of colour. So I linked Black Girls Code, which tries to get more female people of colour into the digital workspace. You could donate to various bail funds to help people who have been arrested during these protests. You could donate to a charity promoting community restoration, which is helping rebuild a lot of the damaged property in black areas that have been damaged due to the protests and riots and stuff. Charities for disabled people of colour, so I linked the Autistic People of Colour Fund. Various police reform charities which are making legislative efforts towards ending systematic racism. I linked the Community Justice Action Fund, which is focusing on gun violence. And as it's Pride Month right now, I have linked a bunch of charities for Black LGBT people. Black Trans Travel Fund or Brave Space Alliance. So yeah, there's not really any excuse because there is something you can be doing from home, for free, alone, like there is something you can do because that's the only way if everyone gets on board. Obviously, black people believe that Black Lives Matter. So it's really white people that have to put in the effort here to listen and pay attention and try and understand that movement and do what we can to make things better. I want to end on a positive note, so I'm gonna read a little bit of a Facebook post I saw that someone shared which lists a number of changes which have been put into place ever since the protests started. Within 10 days of sustained protests, Minneapolis bans the use of chokeholds. Dallas adopts a duty to intervene rule that requires officers to stop other cops who are engaging in inappropriate use of force. New Jersey's Attorney General said the state will update its use of force guidelines for the first time in 2 decades. In Maryland, I don't know how to pronounce that, a bipartisan work group of state lawmakers announced a police reform work group. LA City Council introduces a motion to reduce LAPD's $1.8 billion operating budget. Police brutality captured on cameras leads to near immediate suspensions and firings of officers in several cities. Monuments celebrating Confederates are removed in cities in Virginia, Alabama, and other states. The street in front of the White House is renamed Black Lives Matter Plaza, and military forces are being withdrawn from DC. The list goes on and on and on. So change is starting and I hope it continues and I hope you can be a part of that change. And if you disagree with the overall message of this video, then to be honest, you can just unsubscribe from my channel because I'm not interested in your support or your views, so goodbye. But as for the rest of you, which I'm pretty sure is at least most of you, thank you for watching. Please check out the links below and I will see you next week.